As many historians have noted, Zionism began as a secular European survival movement. In the face of persecution and displacement, it was a political response, rooted more in Enlightenment liberalism than biblical prophecy. But over time, Zionism absorbed religious narratives, first from within, through figures like Rabbi Kook, and later from without, courtesy of American evangelicals. Today, Zionism has drifted far from its secular humanist origins. What started as a quest for safety has become entangled in messianic nationalism and geopolitical power plays. Christian Zionists in the US embraced Israel, not out of concern for Jewish safety, but to help stage their own end-times drama.
Christian Zionism is very often both anti-Semitic and Islamophobic. Hey everybody, I'm Dan McClellan. I'm a scholar of the Bible and religion, and Christian Zionism can roughly be described as evangelical support for the institution of the nation of Israel, because most Christian Zionists believe that they will play a key role in the eschaton, in the end times, ultimately leading to the second coming of Jesus.
Christian Zionism goes back way before Jewish Zionism. When this rise of the far-right evangelical Christian movement, since mainly pretty much in the 1950s. It was always around, but became expanded and organized a major base for the Republican Party. And they're super Zionist. They're also extremely anti-Semitic. Their theology, if you read it, is you have to support Israel because that'll lead to Armageddon. Everybody gets slaughtered, and the souls that are saved rise to heaven, and everybody else goes somewhere bad, and including all the Jews. You can't be more anti-Semitic than that. But
in fact, the loudest religious cheerleaders for Zionism today are often not Jews at all, but non-Jewish evangelicals who view Israel as the key set piece in an apocalyptic screenplay, where Jesus makes a dramatic second entrance, and Jews either convert or perish. Religious Zionists now dominate Israeli politics, with figures like Itamar Ben-Gvir and Bezalel Smotrich leading the charge. Meanwhile, U.S. support for Israel has become increasingly theological, especially among right-wing evangelicals. Even secular Zionism, once rooted in realism and socialist ideals, now borrows biblical language to justify modern policies, particularly around settlements and annexation. So, how did this shift happen? Enter the Christian Zionists, key players in rewriting Israel's narrative from a refuge for Jews to a prophetic engine for the end of days. Let's start with one of the most prominent, former U.S. Vice President Mike Pence. Is Mike Pence a Christian Zionist? Absolutely. Pence is a textbook case of Christian Zionism in the American political elite. A devout evangelical, Pence is heavily influenced by dispensationalist theology, which sees the return of Jews to Israel as a prerequisite for the second coming. For Pence, support for Israel isn't just foreign policy, it's biblical duty. He famously introduced himself as a Christian, a conservative, and a Republican, in that order. That order matters, especially when it comes to Israel. As vice president, Pence pushed hard for the U.S. Embassy move to Jerusalem in 2018, backed the Abraham Accords, and delivered fiery speeches to groups like AIPAC and Christians United for Israel, CUFI. In those speeches, he spoke of Israel not as a nation-state, but as the fulfillment of God's promise. In a CUFI address in 2017, Pence proclaimed,
Israel didn't need a defense. Israel's very existence is a testament to the faithfulness of God.
This kind of rhetoric blurs the line between biblical myth and modern statehood, a hallmark of Christian Zionism. Pence, like many evangelicals, often conflates the secular state of Israel, established in 1948, with the biblical kingdom of David. His theology aligns closely with CUFI founder John Hagee, as well as Jerry Falwell and Pat Robertson, figures who view modern Israel not as a place for Jews, but as a divine ticking clock. So yes, Pence is not just a supporter of Israel. He's a believer in Israel's prophetic role, putting him firmly in the Christian Zionist camp. What about current House Speaker Mike Johnson? Yes, Speaker Johnson is also a Christian Zionist, and a deeply committed one. A devout evangelical and another disciple of dispensationalist prophecy, Johnson believes modern Israel is part of God's end-times plan. He has publicly said, "I believe that God will bless nations that support Israel." He even called his visit to the Temple Mount a fulfillment of biblical prophecy. One of Johnson's first acts as Speaker was to push through a resolution affirming unconditional U.S. support for Israel. No questions, no conditions. Since then, he's faced pressure from groups like CUFI to keep his caucus in line and maintain robust aid to Israel. He also has close ties with Israeli hardliners and settler organizations, often joining them at events to rally U.S. backing. Johnson checks every Christian Zionist box: biblical justification for modern policy, political loyalty to Israel, deep engagement with evangelical institutions. Who else in U.S. government fits the Christian Zionist mold? Senator Ted Cruz, a Republican from Texas, a vocal member of the Congressional Israel Allies Caucus, quotes scripture like, "Those who bless Israel will be blessed," to explain his foreign policy. Faith and Zionism are fused in his worldview. Mike Huckabee, former Arkansas governor and now U.S. ambassador to Israel, a longtime Christian Zionist who opposes a Palestinian state, defends settlements, and favors a one-state solution justified by Scripture. Others in Congress include Doug Lamborn, Trent Franks, Brad Sherman, and Eric Cantor, the former House Majority Leader. These lawmakers are affiliated with the Israel Allies Caucus, which mirrors Israel's own Christian Allies Caucus. So what's at stake for Palestinians? Quite a bit. And not just politically. The rise of Christian Zionism in U.S. foreign policy has real concrete consequences for Palestinians on the ground. When did the Israeli settler movement begin? The modern settler movement took off after the 1967 Six-Day War, when Israel captured the West Bank, Gaza, East Jerusalem, the Sinai, and the Golan Heights. While early Israeli leaders viewed these territories as bargaining chips for peace, religious Zionists saw something else: biblical inheritance. The first post-war settlement, Kfar Etzion, was re-established in 1967. By the 1970s, groups like Gush Eminim, Bloc of the Faithful, emerged, promoting settlement as a divine mandate. Today, more than 700,000 Israeli settlers live beyond the 1967 Green Line, about 500,000 in the West Bank and 200,000 in East Jerusalem. These settlements often involve confiscation of Palestinian land, evictions and home demolitions, restricted zones and settler-only roads, military protection for settlers. Entire communities like Kirbet Humsa and Masafer Yatta have been wiped off the map. This isn't just encroachment, it's slow-motion ethnic cleansing, sanitized under security concerns. Is the end goal to push all Palestinians out? For some hardline settlers and religious Zionists, yes. Groups like Lahava, Hilltop Youth, and Kahanist factions explicitly advocate for full Palestinian removal. For others, the approach is more strategic: fragment the West Bank, undermine any possibility of a contiguous Palestinian state, maintain permanent Israeli control. They may not say ethnic cleansing out loud, but the effect is often the same. Is this the goal of the current Israeli government? Let's just say the mask is off. Netanyahu's coalition is the most far-right in Israel's history. Ministers like Smotrich and Ben-Gvir openly call for annexation, loyalty tests, and population transfer. The de facto policy? Permanent occupation, apartheid, and possible transfer. And what about Trump and the MAGA crowd? They're all in. Mike Pompeo declared that Israeli settlements were not illegal. The Abraham Accords ignored Palestinians altogether. Evangelical MAGA leaders view Greater Israel as a fast track to the Second Coming.
Though the Israeli government likes to frame everything that is happening now as a response to October 7th, this is a pre-existing agenda. I mean, this is the settler movement, Ben-Gvir. I mean, all of these figures have always wanted Gaza depopulated. They've always wanted to settle Gaza. They've always believed it is part of so-called Greater Israel. So does Netanyahu. It's part of their coalition agreement dating back to 2022, right? That they want the whole thing, and also the West Bank, by the way.
Their worldview is simple. Palestinians are in the way of prophecy. The settler movement has entrenched apartheid conditions across the West Bank. And while not all Israelis or Jews support it, the Israeli state under its current leadership is facilitating it, with full-throated backing from Christian Zionists in the US. And Palestinians? They're still waiting for dignity, for justice, and for the world to care more than it prays. Now here's the terrifying part. These Christian Zionists aren't fringe. They're running America. It isn't just Christian nationalism. It is Christian fascism led by a non-believer they've anointed as God's instrument, Donald Trump. Jewish Canadian author Naomi Klein calls it end times fascism. This isn't just theology creeping into politics. It's eschatology hijacking global policy. Apocalyptic thinking wrapped in the flag and stamped Made in America. And it's not coming. It's already here.